Welcome everyone in Facebook land. Shalom, shalom, shalom. So welcome, we're being live streamed now. And may I say that what we have going on is like a Farbrengen. One would think that even after Alter Rebbe came out of prison, both in 1798 and 2 years later, 1801, that he would have just animosity to the czars and to the Russian government for throwing him in prison. But lo and behold, a decade later, more, during the actual Napoleonic War of 1812, it's the extreme turnaround. Now, Alter Rebbe is supporting, vehemently supporting the Tsar against Napoleon. Already read some of the letter from Alter Rebbe's son, the Mittler Rebbe, Dever, last week, how he's going on more in length on the despotism and just sheer, the way that Mittler Rebbe frames it as sheer evil of Napoleon and all that, versus the benevolence and all that of the Tsar, which he says is Malchus Shel Yavan, and so on and so forth, and why to support the Tsar specifically. Right, that letter we started reading last week, that was written like a year after, like within a year of the war. Like the analysis afterwards of what went on and the whole map, the whole escape of Alter Rebbe from Napoleon. But what I will share with you now is just we're on the subject, and also I'll show you also how this all ties into the Parsha more than one way. Is actually a short letter from Alter Rebbe himself, apparently written while he was during his escape from Napoleon in 1812, of how much he supported the Tsar Alexander over Napoleon. And this is a letter written to whom? None other than the number one Hasidic spy for Russia. So it seems like during the war, there was more than one Chassid who was spying on behalf of Russia. And the number one spy was a prominent Chassid, prominent community leader altogether, particularly of Vilna. He was on the top, and he was outed as a Chassid already in the 1790s, and he was directly related to the Alter Rebbe's imprisonment then. But he still, even after coming out as a Chassid, he still held a seat of prominence, even though he was attacked and his house turned over, and he was really persecuted by the Misnagdim. Number two is that on the Hasidic calendar, it's an important week coming, especially Shabbos. Shabbos is Yud Tes Kislev. Yud Tes Kislev is both the yard site of the Maggid of Mizrich, the Mizrich Maggid, the successor of the Baal Shem Tov, and the day of liberation of the Alter Rebbe of Chabad, Chassid, prominent community leader altogether, particularly of Vilna. He was on the top, and he was outed as a Chassid already in the 1790s, and he was directly related to the Alter Rebbe's imprisonment then. But he still, even after coming out as a Chassid, he still held a seat of prominence, even though he was attacked and his house turned over, and he was really persecuted by the Misnagdim of Vilna. Yet he still maintained his position in the community of prominence. And his name was Rabbi Moshe Meisels, or eventually Meislish. Eventually, after in the late 18 teens or 20s, he actually made Aliyah to Israel, where he published even a sefer or two, a book or two. And his direct descendants are all still in Lubavitch, in Chabad. It's the Meislish family. And I learned, I was a friend with with a Meislish, his direct descendant from the Israeli Chabad family, direct descendants of Moshe Meislish. There's other letters, but we have from the Alter Rebbe to Moshe Meislish. One is famously printed when in the handouts that are given at Chabad weddings, which the previous Rebbe printed a facsimile of this letter for the Rebbe's own wedding, which was the 14th of Kislev, 1929. So the Rebbe's anniversary, so to speak, was just a few days. It's just last Tuesday. Last Monday, right? And that in that short letter to Moshe Meislish, Alter Rebbe is actually telling him not that even though that Chassidim are being attacked by the Misnagdim, they should not respond. It's certainly not in kind. That they should just receive, accept all whatever persecution or whatever chastisement they're receiving, but don't overreact. Not only overreact, even react at all. And this is a virtual thing of being the love and the einam elvin. To be right, and because eventually what happened is that at some point it got so bad because there was physical violence by the Misnagdim against Chassidim, and boycotts of work, of businesses and such, and there was some really not good stuff going. That some Chassidim, out of desperation, did inform the authorities of what's going on. There were a couple isolated cases, at least one I know of, maybe more. And this really, Alter Rebbe was upset about that. He wanted his Chassidim just to take the brunt and not respond at all. So anyways, so in addition to that, this is a letter later. This is a letter, what we're going to see. It's a short letter, which is why I'm going to share it, because he's writing directly to Moshe Meislish. And remember last week's letter from Mittler Rebbe, who writes that, as we know, we had spionists, we had spies, Hasidic spies. So in this scenario, the context of how did Moshe Meislish become a spy for Russia against Napoleon? It's because at some point while Alexander was maybe escaping Moscow, whatever, up to St. Petersburg, or whatever the route was, he wound up in Vilna, befriended Moshe Meislish, who was a polyglot. Is that what we say when someone knows many languages, right? In other words, he knew French well enough, and Russian, obviously. He was a businessman; he knew his way about. So the Tsar made up Moshe Meislish, because what would happen was that Napoleon was sweeping through the Russian Empire. And he had such confidence that he's just going to take over the whole empire. He didn't over-suspect that whoever was available locally to help him, he would just accept, especially Jews, because in Napoleon's mentality, he's coming to liberate the Jews, right, to the time of enlightenment. So who else but the Jews would just embrace Napoleon for overthrowing the Tsar? So the Moshe Meislish made up with the Tsar in advance that when Napoleon comes through, he will offer his services to Napoleon, to the French, but really he will feed the information clandestinely to the Russian side. And so it was. I mentioned one or two stories last week of Moshe Meislish. In fact, in one story that's Napoleon even suspected Moshe Meislish. So he became a translator, and he was helping out Moshe Meislish. He was even allowed into the war room to go over to see the maps and such. And that at one point, Napoleon came into his tent and he said, "There's a spy in here." And he put his hand on Moshe Meislish's chest, and his heartbeat was not racing. This is okay, let him go. But and that Moshe Meislish said, if not for me learning from Alter Rebbe about Meich Shalto Al Alev, that the mind controls the heart, I would have lost it then. I would have been caught. So that his teachings of Chabad Chassidus saved his life in that context. So be it as it may, as time went on, the Moshe Meiser was with Napoleon. He was starting to warm up. Actually, it seems like that maybe there is a benefit of the French and to take over the Russian Empire. Maybe it would be more beneficial for the Jews, right? So in response to this, apparently Moshe got word to Alter Rebbe. What should he do? What does Alter Rebbe really want him to continue spying for Russia? So in response to that, the Alter Rebbe sends Moshe Meiser the following brief but really revealing letter. And in fact, this was published in a book of Moshe Meiser himself, published when he made it to Israel. He wrote a book with some poems and whatnot. So again, this date is dated most likely at the end of year 1812, while the Alter Rebbe was traveling through the Russian Empire, just being ahead of the invading French. And in if you read through the whole Mittler Rebbe's letter that we began last week, you'll see even as how he writes that we were able to hear the the cannons shooting from the French and the Russians responding, and how that they were sacked up, so to speak, that they were hanging out with top brass of the Russian, top generals of the Russian army on the front, near the front lines. So the Rebbe, Alter Rebbe's family and that whole caravan were right there near the battlefronts. Okay. So during that whole period, the Alter Rebbe is able to get a short letter out to Moshe Meiser, and this is how it goes. So our teachers taught. This is a prelude to letter. It is the custom of the custom of the land of the people to give escrow, or to give even like a tip to the host, the one who's running the whatever, the inn, so to speak. In other words, he's opening here. It is our etiquette, and more than etiquette, almost moral imperative to show favor and benevolence to our host, meaning to the Tsar. Okay, that's how he's opening. He's already, in this opening line, he's already expressing his full support for Tsar Alexander. Ahuvi Didi Moshe, my beloved friend Moshe. This is Moshe Meiser. Okay, Chai Hashem v'chai nafshi. Chai, it means to live Hashem, live my life. Chai is also a way to say that I swear, meaning take my word. It's my solemn word on my God's word, or word depending on my life. That kach heruni li b'musif b'yayin aleph d'Rosh Hashanah. That so they showed me, meaning from heaven, on day one of Musaf of Rosh Hashanah. If you remember, I shared with you a few weeks ago the story of that, the Rosh Hashanah of the year 1812, that there was disagreement amongst the Hasidic Rebbes who to support, the Tsar or Napoleon. And it was sort of understood that whichever Rebbe will blow shofar first, that the Rosh Hashanah, that God will listen to their opinion, the way they want it. And that whereas I think it was the Kashat Samagid, excuse me, maybe the Apterav or someone that who were supporting Napoleon. So they in the morning they got up early and they davened shachas really fast to blow shofar as early as possible. When it came to blowing the shofar, this other Rebbe said, the Litvak got gechapt, right? The Litvak, that's how the Alter Rebbe was called by his colleagues, the other students of the Maggid, who were Rebbes, because he came from the white Russian plains, unlike the others that came mostly from more of Ukraine or South Belarus. So, he's like the Litvak, Lithuanian. He was from Vitebsk. which is not technically Lithuania, but then it was known as the Lithuanian Commonwealth, which was right there near Russia. It says that what does it mean? Litvakot is the Rebbe kept it away from everyone else, other Rebbes, because Alter Rebbe was smarter. He woke up right at sunrise. I mean, he started right at sunrise. He got before sunrise, and as soon as it was sunrise, he didn't even wait to dam shachar. He just blew shofar before shachar. So that's it. So it's this very Rosh Hashanah that Alter Rebbe is saying, that meaning basically following that same, during his davening of Musaf, Rosh Hashanah, Alter Rebbe is attesting in first person that they revealed to him from above that Be'im she'inatzech base pay. If base pay will be victorious, what do you think base pay stands for? Base pay is Bonaparte. Okay, that was the slang for Napoleon. It was Bonaparte, right? That if Bonaparte, meaning Napoleon, will be victorious, Yuram Karen Yisroel, then that if Bonaparte will be victorious, Yuram Karen Yisroel, it will be very good. That means that the prestige of Israel will be uplifted, right? That they'll be given equal rights, right? That's what Napoleon promised, the Napoleonic Code and what have you. We know also, for example, Napoleon created his own Sanhedrin of Jewish rabbis. So to bring he was almost imposing his Napoleonic vision onto the Jewish, onto all societies, including the Jewish community. And then, right, in the name of unity, enlightenment, what have you. And also so if Bonaparte will be victorious, the Yerba Ha'esha Yisrael, there will be greater economic advantages and freedom for the Jewish community. Avo Yispardu Yisnatku Libon Yisrael Me'avir Shabbat. But together with that, the hearts of Israel will become separated and cut off from their Father in heaven. That means it will lead to spiritual downfall for the Jewish community. Because in the name of enlightenment and open free society, it will have very non-traditional effects, to put it mildly, on the Jewish community. So they will become spiritually, as much as they'll become economically wealthy, but they'll become spiritually impoverished. That's if Napoleon wins. But if Aleph, meaning Tsar Alexander, if Alexander will be victorious, Yushbal Karen Yisrael, right? The Jewish prestige will still be subservient, will still be downtrodden. The Yerba Ha'ayni Yisrael, and the Jews will remain economically in poverty. Avo, however, Yisangu v'Yiskashru v'Yischabru liben shel Yisrael v'Yishmayim, but their hearts will be able to continue to be in delight and connected to their Father in heaven. And as we know, as the Mittler Rebbe expounded on the letter we started last week, we know that the attitude of the czars of Russia in general was to be very pro-religious, just to say. Even Alexander, who was seen as more liberal than his father Paul, he was still seen as one who, by nature and innately, believed in a God, not just in a remote deistic way that maybe Napoleon, if at best he did believe in God, then maybe it would be in that form. But they believed in the God of the Bible fully and what have you, and supported, so long as it was an authentic, authority, well-founded religion. It was fully supported by the state, which in fact carries its way on all the way now till under Putin is like that. That unlike the communists, who were anti-religion, Putin, so long as you're from the conventional or long-established religions, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, blah blah blah, there is an official representative of that in the Russian government now. So now the Alter Rebbe continues this letter to Moshe Zelachem, and this for you is a sign that what I'm saying about this message that the Rebbe says he got from heaven on that Rosh Hashanah that to support Tsar over Napoleon. Shebekerev hayamim, that soon, in a few days, yuto machma denechem, the beloved of your eyes will be taken from you. What do you think this is referring to? That the Alter Rebbe is predicting his own demise that will be imminent. And so it was. He passed away at the end of Teves that year. We don't even know the exact date it was written. It's certainly written after Rosh Hashanah. So he at the furthest, he's writing this within months before his own passing. At closest, could be within weeks. So this is relating to.
Would it be correct to say that Napoleon was into some kind of spiritualism, as per the story of the magic and whatever?
Into spiritualism. Very good. Okay, thank you for that opening. So the answer is yes. There's even a book which I saw years ago, so he was more into a certain like occultism. He had like there was even a madame, I forget her name, who was almost like a spiritual fortune teller or someone he would confer with on that plane. And I don't think it was directly related to the Freemasons per se, but he was certainly into some spiritual occultism, which is why there was like sort of rumor spread that Napoleon is into magic or into paganism, even to that. And that got back to the Alter Rebbe too in the following Chabad story, which is, and this is related to our parsha, that when the Alter Rebbe ran away from home in Elul, right, a couple of weeks before Rosh Hashanah, 1812, he ran when they saw that they had a sense Napoleon's swiftly sweeping through, over the Russian Empire's western border into inland, and that he was going to be imminently in that area, the Alter Rebbe's home, the Ajna. The Alter Rebbe ran away. But then he remembered he left over a pair of slippers, pantofels, it's called in Yiddish, in his home. So he sent back a messenger, someone to go and get those last items that he forgot in the house. Why? Because he was concerned that if Napoleon got a hold of it, he would work with his whatever magic or occultism to have us to cast a certain spell against Alter Rebbe. So it was that whoever his shliach went back to the house, emptied out the last things he left there, slippers, what have you, made it back, and not long thereafter, Napoleon. The story goes, Napoleon did come in, tracked down the house of Alter Rebbe, and was looking to see if there was anything of Alter Rebbe's that he could use in some totemic or talismanic way. So, how is this related to our parsha? Because it says after the encounter of Yaakov and Esav, and what happens? He doesn't right away continue the road. So Esav is inviting Yaakov, "Oh, come with me now." So Yaakov says, gives, if you want to call it wasn't just an excuse, it was legitimate. He said, "No, you know what? I forgot some things back there, so I have to go get them. So I'm sorry. And I'm going to come meet up with you anyways." Right? The truth is, he never met up with Esav again. As it said. But we know the famous teachings and commentaries that he was referring to that in the times of Mashiach, he will come back. But then, and in Chassidus, it's interpreted that the ability to refine, elevate Esav will only be able to be done in Messianic times. So that's what Yaakov was referring to. That basically, initially, Yaakov, after this is all Kabbalistically Chassidic take on the Parsha in general. That why did Yaakov send messengers or angels, as Rashi says, to Esav to meet? Because after doing all the elevations of the sparks that we spoke about last week, and with Lavan, Yaakov thought, okay, now it's time to the last frontier is Esav himself to be elevated, right? And it's time for that. And then when he went, and especially with the offerings and what happened, he realized that no, it's not time yet. So that's why he didn't go to and reciprocate to go with Esav. Because basically he stalled, he pushed it off politely in a way to say we'll meet again in times with the times of Mashiach. Okay, so after that, then that is when he meets the famous quote unquote angel wrestler, right? And that's when Yaakov's name changes into Yisroel. So here is the pasuk. So that's why. So he left with his 2 wives and 2 maidens and 11 children, like Harvey was just mentioned earlier. They crossed the Maver Yavik, the ford of Yavik, and Yavik is Yud Kuf Beis is very important in Kabbalah, but we won't go into that now. And they crossed, and then this is where the encounter was. It says Vayivasei Yaakov levadei. Yaakov was left alone. Vayavek ish imay adalis hashachar, and a person ish, it says, in a figure, right? So it's not a human person, but as Rashi says from Medrash, I think also even from the Gemara, this is that it was the Sareh Shel Esav. It was Prince. No, let's find the Rashi until the morning. Let's just read to get continuity here. And he saw that he couldn't. Who saw the angel, the prince, the spiritual prince of Esav? So he couldn't defeat Yaakov in the wrestling match. So by Yiga b'kaf Yerich, that's when he hit him in the side, in the thigh, so to speak. And while he wrestled, fighting with him. Then he said, let me go, for the dawn is breaking. It's almost like the Dracula story that when sunrise comes, he turns into whatever. So sunrise coming. So he says, no, I won't let you go unless you bless me. To which the angel says, what's your name? He answers Yaakov, and he says, no more will your name be called Yaakov, but Yisroel. Because why? Yisroel means because you battled. You have, what does the English translation say? You have striven. Right. Sarisa also could be to have dominion over. But in this sense, it means that you stood up to people, godlike people and angels, and you prevailed. And then Yaakov says, oh, so tell me your name. And he says, well, why are you asking me for a name? And he blessed him there. Okay, and that's why it's called Peniel, because that is where he saw God face to face. Peniel, the word Panim. Okay, not so nafshi, and his soul was sick. Okay, so we read that. So on this, anyway, it says, Vayivasei Yaakov levadei. What does it mean left alone? He had forgotten some small jars, and he returned for them. Okay? This is from the Gemara Chulin. So, and as the Gemara explains, like, what do you see in the pasuk? Because it says Vayivasei Yaakov levadei. He says, don't read it levadei with a base, but with a chaf. Like Vayivasei, he left alone lechadei for his jugs. Okay? The word kad is Hebrew for jugs. It means Yaakov made a turn, went back to pick up his whatever he left over, small jars. So this is a foreshadow or echo of what the Alter Rebbe did himself, also going back into the war zone, so to speak, to get his last remnant, even if they're little value, his possessions, lest the other side get a hold of it. Okay, so that's this is Levad. What, by the way, that's the Gemara's take on it. What is there's the Medrash take as what is Vayivasei Yaakov levadei? He was left alone. That this levadei is connected to another pasuk that has levade. Which pasuk? Ki niskav Hashem levade b'yaymahu. That God will be exalted, be uplifted on that day. That means that Yaakov, at this point, God was being lit at the highest, almost the godlike spiritual level. That's why there's that niggun that puts the two psukim again together. Maybe I'll sing it for you because we didn't do a niggun yet. Marcha David sings it better, but here it goes. Ki niskav Hashem levadai b'yaymahu. Ki niskav Hashem levadai b'yaymahu. Vayavasei Yaakov levadai vayayavei kishimai adalois ashachar adalois ashachar vayavasei Yaakov levadai vayayavei kishimai adalois ashachar. So these two ways to look at it. Either that it's something really, let's say, tedious or say, very down to earth. Now Yaakov was just going, that he was in the city, he just was going to pick up his leftover, I don't know, stuff, right? That's one way. Other ways that Yaakov was going, it was on the high spiritual level, right? So it's like two extremes. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe explains in the talk that actually these are the two attitudes of where we are in Galus and why Chassidus came to the world. The Rebbe connects it also with the fact that we usually read the Parshat Vayishlach this time of Yud Tes Kislev. That by the way, in this pasuk where it says that they fought till Alois HaShachar, that Alois HaShachar, I think it's brought down in the Lekach Tov or somewhere, even non-Chassidic sources, that it refers to the days of Mashiach, when with the altar, the Shachar, the Ur Shachar being the light of the ultimate light is the light of Shachar Hegia, as we know, is the dawn break, right? Is the ushering in of Mashiach. So too, these two approaches of what state Yaakov was on is related to this. There's two main reasons given why Chassidus revealed itself in the world when it did. Because the question is, if Chassidus is the truth and all this, why did it wait till the mid 1700s? To come out, or the early 1700s, right? Should have been up. So the answer is, there's two answers. One is that because it's so dark in Galus, so Chassidus is like a bright, intense light, right? So therefore, till then it wasn't needed because the world and the Jewish Klal Yisrael was still within a certain aptitude of light. They didn't need brighter light, but when things got so dark, then they needed extra strong light, and that's why Chassidus came. In fact, that Alter Rebbe is one of his main disciples. In fact, one of his successors in a way, because he made his own Chabad Chassidus called the Baron Scheller. He writes in the introduction of one of his Sfarim, I think it's Sharei Hayichud Hamuna, modeled on Alter Rebbe's part 2 of Tanya. He says that's why, because the further you are, the more stronger the light you need. Like almost like a lighthouse needs, right? Of course, to be far. But for people who are close, if you have a bright light, it's going to blind them. Too bright light, right? So it couldn't be revealed until people were so distant from the source or dark. Similarly, there's actually a Maimer of Yud Tes Kislev attributed to the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe Shalom Ber from the year 1903, I think. Though some people have questioned if it's from the Rebbe Rashab, or if it's from a prominent chassid, but it opens up to explain the great question of why did the Torah of the Baal Shem Tov reveal itself only when it did and not before. And it goes there through various periods, like 4 periods of Jewish history, and showing why Dafka by the 1700s, the Jewish community, especially after Shabbat Tzvi, Chmelnytsky, and the beginning of the spread of Haskalah and Enlightenment, that Dafka then the Jewish community was like in a state of hisalfus, fainted, and that's why Dafka then Chassidus had to come. By the way, incidentally, Chassidim say that's why we call it not just Chassidus but Teiris of Rabbi Yisroel Baal Shem Tov. Why? Because it says when someone faints, what wakes them up is if you whisper their name into their ear. So, being that the Klal Yisrael was in a state of being of having fainted, so they needed their name Yisroel to be whispered into their ear. Okay, so that's you say so that works. Yisroel Baal Shem Tov. Incidentally, and that's again connected to our parsha, right? What we just read. Yaakov there's no more Yaakov. It's not just no more Yaakov, but he's Yisroel. And that Yisroel, the name Yisroel is a higher than Yaakov, right? It's getting deep. It's almost like the soul name of the Jewish people, and that's the name that stuck. It became the Iker name. It's not Eretz Yaakov, it's Eretz Yisrael. It's not Yaakov's Klal Yisrael, right? In fact, they say, right, it's also related directly to the whole Torah, which we know the famous acronym Yisrael is Yeh Shishim Ribu Isis the Torah. So right away, the name connects us with the whole Torah. Also, it's brought down in commentaries that the name Yisrael is the acronym of all the patriarchs and matriarchs. Aleph, you want to see the word Yisrael, Jonathan has it on his Shalom Yisrael image here. So the Aleph is Avraham. The Yud is Yitzchak and Yaakov. The Shin is Sarah. The Reish is Rivka and Rachel, and the Lamed is Leah. So it's we have all the patriarchs, all the Avos Imais in the name Yisrael. And there are many other things related. Yisrael's Yashar Kel, straight alignment with God. It's all, or others say Shir Kel, the song of God, and on and on. So it's a very appropriate name. Now, if so, why do we still have the name Yaakov, right? Avraham, after he stopped being Avram, he was only Avraham, right? We never call him Avram again. But it's very mysterious because it says almost identical thing here that just like it says Avram, God says no more will your name be Avram but Avraham. That's why we stop using. It's like a name change, legal name change. It becomes Avraham. But here it's interesting that even though the Chumash says openly that the angel tells Yaakov that lo Yaakov Yamar Shim Chakim Yisrael, right? That means we should be called Yisrael only Yisrael from henceforth with. But no, we still are also. He was also called Yaakov. Yisrael and what have and then on and on. So the Gemara in fact asks, why is that so? So the Gemara, I think it's Gemara Brachas. The Gemara answers because you see right away the next verse and on, the Torah goes unlike Avraham after he's changed to Avraham. The Torah never goes back to call him Avram again. But here, you see the next verses on. He's being called Yaakov again. By Yishal Yaakov, and then the next part is by Yikra Yaakov, and on and on. So we see by Yisa Yaakov is Einav. So the Gemara says the fact. So since the Torah itself continues calling him Yaakov, therefore the Yaakov's name remains. Yet now it's just become a subservient second name, almost let's call it a middle name in a way, to the name Yaakov. But as Chassidus asks, the Kabbalah asks, but how gufach tzarich? This itself is a question. Why? Maybe that's a proof text explanation for it, the proof from the text. Why we could still call Yaakov? But what's the difference? Why taka the difference? So I mean, there's a long discussion. There's a lot spoken about on it. But cut to the chase is why Yaakov. This is different than Avram. What is Avram? Avram means Avram. That Avram is he's above. He's almost too lofty. he does not connect with the world, right? But he's remote. He's Ramga. So then he says, the Hayes he comes down in amongst the people. So that draws him down into the world. What is the name Yaakov? Yaakov is, as we spoke about in the past, and when we began speaking about Yaakov, and maybe we'll flesh it out if time permitting, is Yud Tes. The same idea, in the sense of taking the Yud, which is the most, is the highest exalted state of spirituality, like the Yud of Yud Kei Vav Kei, or in places you refer to Keter and so on, and that goes into Akev, into the heel, to the lowest part region, right? And whereas Yisroel is the higher, loftier state, the soul state. In short, Yisroel is the soul name of the Jewish people. Yaakov is the body or physical name of the Jewish people, and that's why it's Yaakov, not just Akev, but Yaakov, to show that our mission is to permeate the Akev, even the lowest parts of the world, the heel at the bottom, the sole of the foot, S-O-L-E, of the foot, with the highest, loftiest level of spirituality, the Yud. So that mission that we have never goes away. That, in fact, is what we're supposed to do. That is our kavana, tachlis, here in this world. Now, of course, it's being reinforced, and spiritualized by Yisroel, but ultimately Yaakov is what we're supposed to accomplish in this world. So we'll never give up Yaakov. Yaakov remains, and each complements the other. Yisroel complements Yaakov, Yaakov complements Yisroel. Okay, that is in very short the answer. There's a lot more we can flesh out about it. I'll just give one more detail here. That it's also, it's like almost that through the name of transitioning from Yaakov to Yisroel is saying that what is Yaakov also coming? We spoke about in the past. Like Jesus said, that Yaakov cleverly outwitted Esav twice. So Yaakov is be going, as like we say, nishkrum, like not glat, not straight. What does Yisrael mean? Yashakel, being straight, right? So it's the opposite in a way of the meaning of like. So the angel is telling Yaakov, now that you fought me and you almost got me, you're revealing that you could take on the other side directly. You don't have to use these clever tactics, what we spoke about in past weeks, Biramaut, with being Ramai, Nirma. But you could use the straight path directly. Reveal yourself openly. You don't need to have a surface way and an inner different direct way. Yes, you needed to, and in fact, Yaakov, as we mentioned, was each time he began straight, but then he was forced and encouraged through Rivka also to needing to play by Esav's own and Lavan's own game of using holy trickery, so to speak. And that's the only way, right? To be zelamazeh, right? So, but now that you show that you can even stand up not only to Esav but even to the Sarisha, so the Esav's guardian, spiritual angel. So all the more. So now you don't have to use these trickery. You could be straight. Only when we're in the world of this physical world, which is full of mixed, it's an admixture of, like the Alter Rebbe says in one of his last writings before he passed away, that the that this world is molish shkarim, or it says somewhere else, a mix of fallacy and truth in a way, like things are confusing. So then you got to use things. So it's we don't give up the Yaakov part entirely. But know that is not the ultimate way. It's only ultimate in the way to bring the divine into even the heel itself. But there's a way to merge the Yaakov with the Yisrael to effectuate this going into the Akev in a straight way. So now the name Yaakov doesn't mean per se trickery, being makbai, but more the emphasis on the Akev, the heel, to reach even the lowest of low levels. Okay. So this is related also to the two meanings of the levade, that Yaakov is alone, or to go, this idea of the small, the jobs, or versus that he was niska Hashem levade, he was high. That's two reasons for Chassidus in the world, was, as we're saying, even because of in Legrayus, as we say in Gemara, even for the flaws of our current condition of Galus. It's so dark, so distant from God, so we need an extra powerful light. That's one way. The second reason why Chassidus came dafka now is the opposite, in a positive way. The Malyusa, that since we're right before the sunrise, we're right imminent, right before the arrival of Mashiach, that therefore the halacha is that times at the Erev Shabbos, you're supposed to taste Farshbais. You're supposed to taste the food of Shabbos before Shabbos. So you get a familiarity with what's to come on Shabbos. You already start getting a taste of Shabbos before Shabbos. I think there's a musical group these days. I think it's called Taste of Shabbos, and one of their things is, I think, they go around playing music before Shabbos, Erev Shabbos. Some do it even, I think they come like to shul before Shkia, like half hour before Shabbos begins, and play musical instruments to bring the chayas, and then they makabel Shabbos, and then they go straight to Shabbos. Taste of Shabbos. No think, right? More than one story about this. Without the two, the tzimis, the whole story. I'll tell you briefly. Details somewhere. And once without the was the Rebbe, he said that once a chassid came, the wife of a chassid came complaining that she makes the tzimis every Shabbos, but her husband comes home before Shabbos, Friday afternoon, and she makes such a delicious tzimis that eats up the whole Shabbos tzimis before Shabbos, doesn't leave anything over Shabbos. And she's desperate, they don't have that tzimis. Okay. But the Alter Rebbe gives her practical advice. Make tzimis, but make it in a way that you split it up and sort of put on the side and semi-hide the real part. So he'll come home, he'll see a pot, he'll eat up the tzimis, thinks he eats the whole thing up, but he'll still have some tzimis left over for Shabbos. Okay. It's cute, practical life. But what's the add-on to it is that after the lady leaves, the Alter Rebbe was there. I think he told his son or whoever that take my word for it. I don't have any understanding about the taiva for food. That since I was with the Magid, my whole palate, my whole taste buds that have gone. I don't have any more taste because of his work on himself. He's worked on himself. And incidentally, they say even that especially more spiritualized people, that in order not to give too much into tithers, that you could even do things like a iskafia on Shabbos, even though there's a mitzvah to eat best foods, madanim, metamim, and all that. But still, for work, no, it's a way of, even though we say that all the food of Shabbos is holy, and it's just about elevating the mitzvahs, but still they say, push it off temporarily. Don't give yourself straight into the indulgence. You'll get to it. Stall it a bit. Even do some iskafi even on Shabbos, and then when you go to the food and eat it, then it'll be done in a way that you'll, with intention, and you'll get the right mitzvahs straight out, rather than just like letting the animal, quote unquote, animalistic part, even though it's Shabbos, but still. Just because it's Shabbos doesn't mean you're giving up that control, that working on oneself with iskafi. Okay, as an aside. But after Rebbe said this, that from by being in Mezrich, where was the other place? The middle of that where Magid was. Since then, Ravna, since he was there, that he doesn't have any more appeal to tasting of food. And they add on to this a story that once it was that there was a soup or some food being cooked in for Shabbos, and whoever was in the kitchen, each one thought that the other one didn't put in enough salt. So when first the cook put in the salt, then after that his wife did, then their daughter did. The mother. Suffice it to say that the pot was over salted to an extreme. And when it came to serving it, everyone tried to eat one bite from this food, and no one could eat it. It was so salty. But the Alter Rebbe just ate it all up like it's regular. And then they someone commented, "Wow, how you were able to eat the soup? It was so salty." He says, "What do you?" He said, "I couldn't tell a difference. I didn't tell a difference." And then too, he said that from the times of the Maggid, he lost his taste buds in that way. By the way, as an aside, it's a thing in the Chabad, the Rebbe's that they eat with a lot of salt, especially on their gefilte fish. They put a lot of salt to eat it, including the last Lubavitcher Rebbe. He put those that were there by, let's say, at the meal, the Pesach Seder. He put on like a thick layer of salt on top of his gefilte fish before he ate it. He did this until he had a heart attack in 1977. And then by doctor's orders, because it increases, I don't know, it inflates the heart with too much salt, what have you, he stopped from then on, it seems like. But there's an Indian of this, not only because of what salt is, but it's also like not to taste the food. He says, azach, it's a rebbe shazach, as they say. Anyways, so this thing of tasting food before Erev Shabbos for Shabbos is a holy thing. There's a holy thing. Rebbes would do it. Some Rebbes, I saw like the Bavli Rebbe, I think some other Rebbes would even go into the kitchen before Shabbos and help with the cooking and taste from each dish. I think brought down the Shechnar Chosab. I think for to taste from every dishes and so on. Same thing, Chassidus. So Chassidus is the Tayameha, is the tasting of the Torah of Mashiach. So before Mashiach comes, you're supposed to taste a little bit. So now why is Chassidus here? Not because it's so dark and all that, but it's not looking to the past or the present, but looking to the future. And also, if you make a cheshbon, I think in that Chassidic discourse of 1902 or 3 that I mentioned, by attributed to Rabbi Rashab, maybe not, he also breaks down like we say, the Elef, that we're in the 5th millennium, right? And Mashiach is supposed to come latest by the end of the 5th millennium. So if you break up the 1,000 years as a day, then I forget the exact cheshbon, but certainly is that we are now after Chatzos, after midday. I think, what do we have? We have like 200 plus years till the end, right? We're year 5784, so 8, 9. So we're 216 years from the end of the millennium, Hebrew millennium. So that is less than a quarter of the millennium. And so if you split the year, the day into 4 parts, so yeah, we're certainly after Shabbos. We're Friday afternoon all the way. So this is the time for Mashiach, for Chassidus to come to us. So this is reflected also in the two reasons why Yaakov went to get these nitzaitzis thing, either the pachim kanim, meaning that we're so stuck in galos that we have to go even for the little vessels to reveal, to ingather the sparks for that, or to look into the future that we're in a higher, more exalted time. In fact, they're both interconnected. These two reasons, like Bob Dylan sings, right? The darkest hour is right before the dawn. So the fact that it's so dark means that we're right before the times of Mashiach. The Frierdiker Rebbe already said this in 1938, 39, right before World War II. That the same bar that the darkest part of the night is right before the Gula, and it seems like he was referring then to the advent of World War II and all that. So yeah, so it's all the more so, and this time, this is why we also need the merging of these two attitudes, approaches. Yaakov, to be in the darkness, bring God, but Yisroel also being aware of the brightness that's out there and it's to be permeated, and that we're in this place of this crossroads, transitional period. And if you hang around the Lubavitchers, you'll know that quite a few of them already believe and are living as that Mashiach is already mamish. Not Kun Mashiach, but Mashiach is already here. We just have to reveal it all the more. So my personal vart I wanted to say earlier, but I think it'll fit in here, is that why is Yud Tes Kislev and Chav Kislev, as we said before, we obviously celebrate both now, this time of the year now, is because it's like this, that, right? There's the idea that the lights of Chanukah menorah is Meisef V'Helech V'Er, that you add, increase, right? That's the way the Gemara says, according to Beis Shammai, like 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 8, right? That means it's about increasing the light. When else in the month we increase? It's like every month, from the beginning of the month till full moon, till Tes Kislev, right? Full moon. So really, but then we have another 10 days till the lights of Chanukah. So there's like this dark zone where the lights, the lunar light is at least dipping. But we didn't start the Chanukah menorah lights to Meisav Hayachar. So how do we keep that momentum going? So that's why straight smack in the middle of this 10-day between the full moon and Chanukah, we're given this milepost. We're given this like reactivation of light, which is Yud Tes Kislev, the light of Chassidus. The Alter Rebbe's own name was Shnei Ohr, double light, two light, to continue that increase of light that shouldn't wane just because it's after the full moon, but to pick up again with some light to get us further until we get to Hanukkah. Episode nice. Okay. Incidentally, this is the beginning. So the Alter Rebbe's conception, believe it or not, was already Yud Tes Kislev. It just revealed itself 9 months later, and then it also plays in that his liberation from prison, it brought a whole new way of spreading Chassidus. It was like mamish, like a rebirth. So it's like even a pre-birth that happened in that day. So there's that covert celebration of Yud Tes Kislev just related to Alter Rebbe's very birthing. We also know that there were intimate connections between the Maggid and the Alter Rebbe. Not only was he one of the youngest, yet revered and known as most learned, but they had certain communications with each other at the end of the Maggid's life. I mean, there's one story, I think it's brought down in Beis Rabbi, the first historical book on Alter Rebbe. I forget the details exactly, but suffice it to say, it was like within a day or two of the Maggid's passing that he, middle of the night, he went with a candle to the Beis Medrash where some of the Chassidim were sleeping. They would sleep in the Beis Medrash. And he came over to Alter Rebbe, and Alter Rebbe felt he made himself like he's sleeping, but he overheard the Maggid tell him that this day, which was like the day going into Yud Tes Kislev, the day that's connected to both of us and bringing light into the world. And so that's when the Maggid passed away. Not only that, there was already for like 3 days before the Maggid's passing, there were certain teachings and things that the Maggid communicated directly with Alter Rebbe. So already like Yud Zayin, Yud Elul, and on. And it's actually, there's, I'll share with you, getting late, but I'll share with you, like from the diaries of the journal of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, Yitzchak, who was a prodigious what would it be, diarist, you would say. He wrote his own personal things, events of his life, and so on, from a young age, from like 10 years old, 11 years old. Very fascinating stuff, man. He was an amazing writer, anyway. So he has in his journal entry of 1906, so that means he was 26 years old, he recounts what he heard from his uncle, who heard from one of the Alter Rebbe's sons, Chaim Avraham. Who he heard his own father, Alter Rebbe, say about those last years of what right before the Maggid passed away. Now, the reason I want to share this with you and even see it in Alter Rebbe, in the Friedrich Rebbe's own language, is because it has to do on the Parsha. Because the Maggid, Yud Tes Kislev Maggid was also this Parshat Vayishlach. So it's related to the idea of bris and shalom zacher, a whole long reason why, but that's not relevant to us. So this was actually published in the talks of the previous Baba Shem in 1902-03, where because of what he was speaking then, he added in here, he gave his journal entry. Rishima Aleph, you see, he says, here I'm sharing with you my journals I wrote down in 1906, which has to do with the Alter Rebbe's birthing. Okay. So this is what's it's a long entry, but I just want to get to the most relevant part. Okay. So the Alter Rebbe is saying like this. Shabbos Parshat Vayishlach Takuf Lam Gimel. It's Parshat Vayishlach, 1772, end of 1772. The lesson Shabbos in the Rebbe in Bamaday, the last Shabbos of the Maggid being in this world. So the Rebbe, the Maggid said, liegen dik in bed, while he was laying in bed, the Maimed Kol Chavrai Kedisha, in front of the whole, that means all his students. This is the Torah of the Maggid. Vayishlach Yaakov Malachim. Our Parsha begins with that. Yaakov sent Malachim. So Malachim, the pshat is just messengers, but Rashi Malachim Mamish. Rashi says wasn't physical messengers like mortal beings, but they were literal angels, right? In the sky that looked like humans, just like the three angels that visited Abraham by his tent were really angels that looked in mortal form. So too were these angels. Now the reason why the commentaries say is because Yaakov was concerned that Esav may kill the messengers. So therefore he sent angels so that they won't be able to be killed. Okay. But it's interesting that Rashi actually takes it away from the normally he gets regular little shot, but here he's giving almost a spiritual reason that it was Malachim Mamish, literally angels. Incidentally, that's the whole Rashi, just these two words. By the way, so now the Maggid answers, what says the following? What is Malachim Mamish? Mamish means literally, right? But mamish also means the word that which you can touch, the tangible, like mimur, mamish. He says that mamish from the malachim Yaakov geschickt zum Esav. That Yaakov sent the mamish, meaning the tangible. That means just the more quote unquote outer shell of the angel that he sent to Esav. The ruchnis from the malachim, but the inner spiritual dimension of this angels is geblieben mit Yaakov, remained with Yaakov. And so on and so forth. Okay, I'm just going to add the one more title, but I want to focus more on this Rashi because the Haftarah is on Chazon Avadia, right? Chazon Avadia, was the beginning of Avadia. That this was a to tell Adai. So Avadia, he says, is that is the word Oved and Yud K, right? So what's Yud K? Yud K Havayas, right? The Yud K Havaya Surah 11 is creating the word. That the Yud, we know this, I think, from Pirkei Rebbe Lezer, right? Where's this from? No, it's Gemara. But I think there's a certain echoing in Pirkei Rebbe Lezer also says that Yud Nivra Yom Haba, the world, the Ganein, the world to come is created with the Yud of Yud K, Ubehei Nivra Yom Hazeh, this world. So what does Avadia mean? Is there Eved Yud K, that he worked in war in both dimensions, bringing like we said earlier, that the Yud of Yaakov, bringing it into the Akef, same thing, working through the world, bringing the Olam Haba part into the Olam Hazeh, the Yud into the Hay. So Chazon Avadia was their Eved Zeh. This is what the Eved, the person who's working the spiritual world, sees. Incidentally, Avadia is giving over this prophecy to Edom. Who was Avadia himself? We know he was a convert. Avadia was from the tribe, from the nation of Edom, who became a Jew. So it's like he was almost preaching to his own people in a certain way. And that's also a shtickle of the prophetic messianic thing, because right, Edom, Esav is the one who Edom comes out of Esav. And that is incidentally why some say Yitzchak had a personal weakness, if you want to call it, for Esav, because he sensed spiritually that there are going to be all these great people coming out of Edom. Avadia, Onkelos, Ager, some, I forget which Tanaim, Amiraim, which were known, they came out of Edom, out of Esav. So if there wouldn't be an Esav, you wouldn't have these great people. So you didn't. So there was taka a certain reason for Edom to exist, Esav and Edom. all that. Okay, but going back to here, the Malachim Mamish, that he only sent the Mamish part of the Malachim to Asaph, but not the Ruchnis. The question is, if so, what's it's not a full shlichus, right? Shlichus, you have to be fully invested, doing your mission all the way. The Lubavitcher Rebbe has a nice observation. He says that when you're going out into the world, if you're going to go out to deal with an Asaph, sometimes, people go out, and this is like practically related to like things like kiruv work, right? You could get influenced by going out into to places of not on a par to the level, not the ideal places to be. So even if you're on your mission, it could still, the environment could have a strong effect. It's very, it's something to be very careful about. So the lesson here is that when you go out, only make sure that the outerness of it, that you do your work fully, you do your shlichus, but don't let it affect your inner core spiritually. That your inner core is always with Yaakov, is always with the source, or if you want to put it, see it in Hasidic terms, it's always with the Rebbe. And when you're connected in that way, never giving up and that the source and never forgetting it and having it that pure, so then you can go and accomplish and go out and be at the greatest levels. And so bless us all that we get to that level wherever we are. I want to just show you a little bit at that point I was saying that from 3 days before already. After that was with the Magid. So he says, B'yom Aleph, Sunday. So that year, Yud Tes Kislev fell out on a Tuesday. So he says that Sunday, Yud Zayin hat mit der Rebbe gesagt in the Gimel Yom Achronim from the Sis B'Chadin, that the last 3 days before he passed away, the Magid told the Alter Rebbe, Zet men nor dem dvar havai, that if when you're within 3 days of the person's passing, you only see the divineness in everything in the physical world. Plus in Yeder Gashmi, that's in the physical world. But dvar havai is der mahus from the Megashmi. You see only the word of God in all physical objects, in the physical environment. I mean, you're already on a plane where you just see all the spiritual. And in fact, this was echoed decades later in end of 1812, 1813, when that Alter Rebbe was passed away, right on the 24th of Teves. Then a couple of days before he passed away, he looked up. Well, he was in bed. He looked up to the ceiling beams and the wood beams, and he said, "I don't see the wood here. I just see the word of God in it." Right. That's how that was another signal that he was about to pass away. So that is the emergence, the merging, I suppose, of the Yud and the K, the spiritual and the physical worlds coming together. Again, the Yaakov and the Ishi and Yisroel dimensions, the Pachim Tkanim and the light, that moment, that right before the dawn break. Okay, so you see that is the lesson of this week's parsha is connecting the highest of spiritual down here in the physical world through and through, in a way that totally till it becomes one. And this is further echoed. It seems already I won't call it late. Maybe we'll go on till Mashiach comes, till dawn. Right? No, I'm joking. Then he goes, I am small, belittled by like I'm overwhelmed. But he used specifically the word I became small from all the kindness and truth that you God did to me. That because I when I left Israel, I just went with my stick, my walking stick staff, and now here I am returning with two big camps. Continue the famous line, "Hatzileni he saved me from the hand of my brother Esau, because I'm afraid that he may come and smite me, mothers and children alike. And yet you told me that I will do good for you, double good, and I'll make your descendants like the sand of the sea, like the beach sea sand, that cannot count because there's so much fun, right?" By the way, there's two nice Chabad niggun to these words, to these psukim. Why not? I'll sing it. Why not? We'll get towards the end. They're two old classical Chabad songs. One goes like this. Hatzileni na meyadachi מיד אחי, מיד עשיו, הצילני נא, מיד אחי, מיד אחי, מיד עשיו, כי ירא עיניך יעשי, כי ירא עיניך יעשי, פן יבוא לקראני, המה בני. ואתה מתה היטב, היטב היטב עמך, אתה מתה היטב, היטב היטב עמך, ואתה מתה היטב, היטב היטב עמך, ואתה מתה היטב, היטב היטב עמך, אתה 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 מתה היטב, היטב היטב עמך. There's another Bachar song where it has it without the words. So it has that same phrase similar inside, but it's a different song. Okay. I'm keeping the text down so you can follow the words also as I sing it. Another more known song is a faster song, Tabata Mata, and we would sing it, let's say, when the Rebbe would give out wine at the end of Yom Tov, Keshel Bracha would sing it by the Rebbe's, the Rebbe would like it in the song. This is how it goes. Veyata mata eteve tevimach, veyata mata eteve yetevimach, samti ezarachav kechelayim, shela yisaf emeirayim, veyata mata eteve tevimach, veyata mata eteve yetevimach, samti ezarachav kechelayim, asher la yisaf emeirayim. Oh, yo, yo, my, yo, my, yo, oh, okay, so that this is all part of that of this monologue that Yaakov is telling God. We could call it a monogod, right? That it begins with Katanti Mikol Chasad. What the Katanti says, Rashi. I am too unworthy for the miracles. My merits are diminished in consequence of all the kindness and truth that you have already done. Right? For this reason, I'm afraid perhaps since you made these promises to, I have depraved niskalkalti by sin, and so maybe this caused me to be delivered by Esav's power. Basically, the way the Hasidic twist on this is, ironically, that as we know, that every day, we're supposed to get better than the day before, especially tzaddikim. So what I did today, even at a time, when it comes tomorrow, or certainly the day after and on, if I'm going up the ladder, excelling, that means what I did yesterday, by today's standards, what I did yesterday could already be considered a sin. So ironically, by being empowered and becoming better, greater, more improved and pure, we're ironically building up more demerits. Because then we're proving that what we did in the past wasn't to the best. Maybe it was best for them, but compared to now, it's not. So ironically, the closer we get, the smaller we get. And therefore, maybe even ironically, the further we get. Here, so there's a certain paradox here in going from chayil to chayil, strength to strength. So that was that's the concern of a tzaddik. So the ultimate answer is, if you realize that even a tzaddik is always in a state, even shavi pol tzaddik to come, right? Where it says what's the lashon, but that's right. Even tzaddikim sin, right? What's the lashon? Tzaddik, Harvey, help me here. Ain't tzaddik baris hashalayach, right? Right. That means impossible. But what does it mean? Of course, it doesn't mean a sin like being transgressing one of the laces of the Torah. It means yachta means that there's still deficiency and flaw. So it always keeps even the tzaddik in check, and that's ironically how a tzaddik always stays in a state of humility and bittul, shiftless, as they call it. Okay, that you realize twofold that you'll never get to the best and perfect. And also just being humbled by all the best and greatness that is happening through everything, even through the trials and tribulations of life. So maybe related to that, maybe I will share with you something. I wasn't sure if we have time, but I'm feeling it because it's related to Yud Tes Kislev. And it's a letter that the Alter Rebbe wrote shortly after he left prison in Yud Tes Kislev. It's such a seminal letter. It's not a long letter. That it was so important that it was printed in Tanya. In the third section, which are the holy letters, it's letter number 2. It's called, and it's odd because Alter Rebbe came out of prison in Parshat Vayishlach, and the letter is known as the letter Katanti. Let me see here. I have the window open for it actually on from Safari is easily friendly, online friendly copy of it. And in fact, in Tanya, it's printed this opening caption, that this is what Dr. Rebbe wrote after he returned home from St. Petersburg. He sent out a letter. Now, I'll give the context as we read it a little bit later on because it's not important right now, but you'll get the gist where it's at. So he opens up with this letter, with this verse from the Parsha, which just says, I'm belittled, almost like humbled to smallness from all the grace, all the mercy, kindness, and the truth that God showered on me. Yaakov says, Pirush. The Alter Rebbe is writing. What does this mean? That all kindness that a person, God does to a person, this kindness that a person received from God should not make him haughty and inflated. Oh, it's all good. But to the contrary, it all should bring the person to more of a state of humility. Why? Because kindness comes, we notice, from the right arm, from the right side. That's what it shows, intimacy, right? It's we saying the left hand is under the lover is under the beloved's head, but it's not a full embrace. It's just like supporting the head, but it's the right hand that gives the full hug. So which is the closeness of God, totally mamish. So that's what chesed is, the total closeness, intimacy to the person. So wouldn't that make someone feel better and greater and bigger because he's so close to God? But no, because when it comes to spirituality, especially God, because whoever's the more closer to God, that means to the source, to the spirit, has to be all the more in like that, and keep himself lower in spirit. Like it says, that God shows himself from a distance. That's the irony, that the closer you get from God to God, the more you feel how low you are vis-a-vis God, right? Because the closer you get to God, the more you realize how great God is, and therefore how small, ipso facto, how small we are. Like this is the term in the Zohar, I think it's the kunik that's there. Kula kamei kol chashiv. Everything towards him, kamei, before him is considered like naught, like nothing. So that means the more you are kamei before God, the more you feel like you're loy chashiv. You're not anything. This is like nothing, right? This is when the chesed and right. But we know Abraham represents Chesed. So therefore, Dafka Abraham, who represented the holiness, Chesed of holiness, it says that he said, "Ranechi after the Eifet," right? That I am like just dust. He had total bittul, total self humility, his total humility. The Zuhi Gam came midasa Yaakov. This is also the attribute of Yaakov. We know Yaakov is not only is he that the combination of Avram and Yitzchak. That's what Rachamim is, Tiferes, combination of Chesed and Gvura. They had both components, but we even know in Mendelian genetics that a recessive gene that skips a generation. So the Chesed of Avram was certainly more revealed in Yaakov than even in Yitzchak. So if so, this is why Yaakov was apologizing, was very open with God about why he was so fearful from Esau. You could ask, why is Yaakov so afraid? He himself is saying in this monologue that Hashem assured him, promised him, he'll be with him. Wasn't Yaakov 100% Baal Maimin? Didn't he believe the word of God 100%? So why would he have any fear? He's like, he's contradicting himself. He's telling God, you promised me that everything will be good and safe. But he's Yaakov. If he believes that, then why is he afraid? Right? So so he explains that. Alter Rebbe explains here. Since Yaakov viewed himself so small, because he was so close to God, as we said, that even though he had nothing before, but this God showered him with so much kindness. So since he was so low, he thought that maybe he was the word like the worst sinner. So that's the paradox here, that because precisely he believed so much, he was so close to God, that's why he got to the state of so thinking he was so small. Okay. By the way, this also explains another thing, that even though we say chesed shows closeness and intimacy, and yira, distance, right? Fear. So it's true on the level of, like we spoke about this in the past. Yud Kei Vav Kei, if you go from bottom up, that the lowest hey of Yud Kei Vav Kei represents the low yira tata, low yira. The vav above it is what's known as small ava love. The hey above that, the first hey Yud Kei Vav Kei is avarabba. So from avazutta to avarabba, greater abba, and the yud is yirei, supernal yira. You would think the yud that's closest to the source of God, that should be love. That's what's closer to intimacy and everything, but just pure close embrace of love, right? But no, Kabbalah and Chassidus itself is the opposite. What's the highest level? It's actually yira, because that's the whole vertis. Because yira is not just fear. Also, like the end of the line, so to speak, the last hey is taka in the sense of yira's fear, but the upper letter, the highest level of yira, is awe. That you're so close, you're in awe and trepidation. So that is the yira that Yaakov is at here. Not that in other words, it's the yira that comes dafkim because you're so close. Okay, and which is in that sense related to also to chesed, which shows intimacy. Now he's gonna contrast this with Yishmael, and maybe this is a bit of an echo of what's happening these days in the Holy Land too. But yet on the other side, the corresponding side, in the Klippa side, is Yishmael, which is Chesed de Klippa. It is also kindness, because Yishmael is right. It represents the kindness of the other side. We know, let's say in Yishmael, that this was known for great hospitality. It's in the tradition till this day, and certain ways that the descendants of Yishmael are very full of kindness. So for what motive is another question, or so on and so on. We're just talking about the classical stereotypes. Okay, that's right. So with Yishmael, the chesed klipa, kol chesed gadol, the greater the kindness is, like that inflates his own ego. And I see so much kindness from above. That must be because I'm so great. So it's the opposite effect. Inflates the ego, not humbles the person. So how do you know when it is an appropriate holy chesed? Is when it creates more humility in the person. Okay. So this is the way it's connected, part of the connection. Now, how does this relate to Yud Tes Kislev? And here comes in some context, which is not so obvious in what we're reading here in the text. And that is after Alter Rebbe came out of prison, Yud Tes Kislev. So it was natural for the Hasidim to celebrate that the Rebbe was free. It was a great victory for Hasidus. Hasidus was now officially given the hechsher, allowed by the Russian government, and they could go and spread Hasidus. So it was a great victory for Hasidim. And there were many Hasidim that still lived amongst the opponents, the misnagdim to Hasidim. So if they start celebrating, making whole big farbrengens and everything, or even they could even start without controlling themselves, the Hasidim could start rubbing it in the face of the misnagdim. Oh, look, we won. We're like Chassidus, like the verb term from amongst Chassidim and on through all the generations. Yada Chassidim ala Yaina, Chassidim on top, and all that. So, in other words, it could make them feel haughty and even arrogant, and it could even create friction with the non-Chassidic community. And as I mentioned before, that Alter Rebbe, how opposed he was from the Chassidim doing anything negative, even to the Misnagdim. So that is what this letter is setting up as a practical reminder to the Chassidim not to celebrate Yud Tes Kislev in a way that of misguided celebration of Chesed. Therefore, I'm here now to inform a proclamation, an important message to the Chassidim on all the great kindness that God in greatness did for us, and as Pratani that He brought from the highest level of greatness down into the world. What? And therefore, that this chesed is not just to be done in a frivolous way, but that should be done, expressed. Our gratitude for all these great kindness should be in the way, the attribute, in the way of Yaakov, Yisroel, who is the remnant of the people in Israel, means Yaakov, meaning us all. Sha'ar is not just like remnant, but he makes himself like he's nothing. He's just the leftover. So Meisar is mamish. That there's no need. Keep Chassidim, keep yourself humble, low, like Yaakov was. Not to raise your hearts above your brethren. That means not Chassidim shouldn't make yourself bigger than the non-Chassidim that they encounter. And not to go and express yourself verbally to them about the victory of the Yud Tes Kislev, or to whistle on them. I mean, so to do anything in derogatory ways against the misnagdim. It goes. We don't even need to mention. They're emphasizing this with a great warning that you shouldn't do any of this. But you Chassidim, you have to keep your spirits and hearts low in check. The midas emes Yaakov, in the attribute of truth, like Yaakov. It says that Yaakov is also the mid of emes, the Yaakov. And to show that be in the state of shiflus, low, before everyone. It's also an echo of the Talmud that heavy shval ruach lifnei kol adam, right? To be in milchus ruach, in a low spirit. And that even as this is, I think, from Mishlei, I think Kehelet, that a soft response settles heated argument. It means don't feed into the antagonist. Ruach necheya, keep a low spirit. And then hopefully, if we behave in such ways, then God hopefully will give it in the hearts of our brethren, even those who are not Chassidim, that to reflection that if we show graciousness to them, then they will respond in kind and maybe even bring Chassidim, right? This also reminds me of that the other pasuk which says, that when your enemy falls, don't be happy, don't celebrate, especially in front of their face. Okay. Now Chassidim like saying that when the Alter Rebbe wrote this, the midas emes Yaakov, that if he wouldn't have written like this with the truth of the emes Yaakov, he would have had hundreds of thousands more Chassidim. But because he emphasized as to be in the midah, in the attribute of emes, like of Yaakov, it was like it was a very high standard to be, and that is what that was the Chabad way to keep him, to be truthful through and through, in both with oneself and with others. So this contact and this sense of going That the closer you are, the farther you are, and vice versa, is this is an essential core of the whole project of what we are, and to take this. This is basically passes on. It's not just for Yaakov, but it's like we see the Alter Rebbe shows in this letter. It's for all of us to express this through and through, and in this way that the Chesed and Emes and of this the Chesed represents, yes, great kindness, benevolence, but still in a limited form. It also reflects it's mainly prayer. Like prayer is, we pray for this connection of kindness from God to shower on us, which even when we go out of ourselves through prayer, and what have you, but still there's still a certain, it's not the very essence. It's emes. So we know that Torah is emes, it's called, right? And then when we learn Torah, God is mamish with us. That term is the emes represents Torah, which is even in a way even greater than prayer. That Torah is with Torah, that is not even that we're in a state of being closer to the infinite, which is unattainable because we're ultimately finite, so never will we get to the infinite. Like we're saying with the angels before that, even angels, as much as they're in spiritual realms, but still they have their mamish side and they have their inner side, ruchni side. And angels too could never leave who they are. But stafke people, humans, particularly Yidden and such, who have souls in bodies that could bridge the two worlds of the physical and the highest spiritual. And that is most embodied, personified, or what have you, manifested in Torah, which is we take the highest, remotest of God's very own Chachma and bridge it in the physical world, whether it's learning the very minutiae of halacha or Shnaim Echsen Talis, the things about the practical world. And that merges also with the inner dimension of Torah, the Pnimis of Torah, Kabbalah Chassidus, so it becomes mamish one. And that's also the connection of spraying the well springs of Chassidus, out till there's no outer in, that the source is in the most outer, the outer is most in a way that it's mamish one. Okay, so that's the point. That's what Chassidus is accomplishing. That's what Yaakov is accomplishing here. That's what we're to accomplish in our day-to-day lives. And that in a way, humans are greater than angels. It says like this: what is when a soul comes into a body? Its godliness is becoming a nivra, a being, a creation. And then through our aveda, through when we work on ourselves, particularly through the body, it affects the soul too. And then what we're doing, we're transitioning back to godly, to the God within our godlike. So it goes from God, or from Bari to Nivra, and back from Nivra to Bari. So that's the 3-stage act basically of our whole life. So and this is what we're accomplishing here. And hopefully even before Yud Tes Kislev, we're already started, especially this Shabbos. We'll go there, and then just for completion of the parsha and things related to our work. So we spoke already earlier before we came on Facebook on the idea of halacha Esav Seder Yaakov, what that means. But in whatever way you want to see it, the point is that there are times when even Esav could become transformed in a positive way. And in my personal reading of it, it doesn't just happen to be at that very moment of Esav embracing Yaakov for that moment. In other words, we could keep that embrace going longer, and in that way be more open to showing twofold that even the Esav has something holy in its spirit, and also it's for Esav's own benefit. Right, and for us, and that's the precursor of the Mashiach time when Esav will be up on the Val Shimar Tzion, as we mentioned before, and be fully revealed for all his holiness. Because as we spoke last week and on, the Esav is coming from the highest level of Taihu. It's just, and that's why Yitzchak thought that Esav is higher than Yaakov, to bring that down. But the point is, Rivka was aware that it's not the time yet. And in fact, the end of the parsha ends over there. The 7 kings, Lefnei Melech Melech Yisroel, the 7 kings, the Yimlach Bayamas is in Kabbalah, it's brought down by the Zohar and very detailed by the Arizal, that these are the levels of the world of Tayu, which lead to different. I think in years past, a year or two ago, when we were doing the parsha, if I recall, we were very into explaining names and such. I think we went through the 7 names of the 7 kings and explained what they are, what levels in the world of Tayu. But the point is that they represent the full extension of Esav and the potential. But ultimately, The real game starts with tikkun in our world. And then ironically, if we work through it well enough down here, through tikkun, then we could ultimately have an effect on the tayu up there. Like what Asa is. Okay, so Chevra, good night. All right, so everyone, have good Shabbos, Vayishlach, and Yud Tes Kislev, and we'll just sing the song, and we'll tune out from Facebook. Good Shabbos, Aaron, good Shabbos, Jonathan, good Shabbos, Abba, Zusha, good Shabbos, Ari, good Shabbos, Yossi, good Shabbos, Danny, good Shabbos, Dana, good Shabbos, everyone on Facebook Live, good Shabbos, Alter Rebbe, good Shabbos, and also Chaf Aleph Kislev. Day right after Chaf Yud Tes, Chaf is Chabad. The day after that, Chaf Aleph Kislev is the day when the Satmar Rebbe was freed from the Nazis by the Zionists. Good Shabbos, Satmar Lubavitch, good Shabbos.